This is Dreaded in today's video topic. So we got the cycle refresh notice yesterday, and due to that, I realized I kind of need to hurry up as everything's going to get reset. That means that all of my plans currently need to be expedited. So we're going to be talking about the next build. Today, this is going to be Ice Barrage, Frostclaw, Battlemages Endeavor, Spellblade. This is a build that I've been cooking up over the past few days to recuperate after the failure that was the other Spellblade build I played this patch, the monstrosity that was Bane of Winter Spellblade, which was really bad. So instead of playing that build, I thought we'd play another bad Spellblade build. No, I'm joking. This build's actually really good. It's just based around a bad weapon. Speaking of Battlemages Endeavor. But before we talk about this build, if you haven't already, I'd heavily suggest leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me and the best way to show me that you guys want more content like this one. Now, let's talk about this more in detail, shall we? So, Battlemages Endeavor. It is a two-handed sword that was buffed a few times, all the way up to about like 48% chance to cast Lightning Blast on melee hit. The reason why this is so interesting is because it does not have a cap on it, unlike Dragara's Claw, and it does not require you to crit. Normally, this is not enough to make it better than Dragara's Claw. Dragara's Claw is a very good item, but turns out if you're playing a Frostbite Spellblade, Battlemages Endeavor might just end up being better overall. And the main reasoning behind that is you could only ever get a 2 LP Dragara's Claw. Let's be real, in the current market, in the current day of last Epoch, people know how good Dragara's Claw is, so getting anything more than a 2 LP one sounds like a laborious effort. Thankfully, Battlemages Endeavor is not being used at all by the community because it is indeed a bad weapon, except for this one specific circumstance. So I have a 4 LP one here. Technically, you only need a 3 LP one. I just wanted to slam Blind Chance on mine so I didn't have to build Crit Avoid, but if you wanted to make your gear better, you could run Crit Avoid or less damage taken from crits or Blind Chance from another source, and then dump this and only use a 3 LP sword. Now, being able to use a 3 LP sword means not only can we get melee attack speed, we can get armor shred, and we can get cold damage. The reason why we're running so much armor shred on this and all of our other affixes is because of the node that was added in Rune Master, the 7-point threshold node that allows us to apply our armor shred as Frostbite chance for cold spells. This applies to our cold lightning blast. This applies to our Frostclaw. It applies to our Ice Barrage. It applies to everything other than our Mana Strike, which doesn't do any damage anyway, so it doesn't matter. Which is great. This means that we can apply a very large amount of Frostbites very quickly, as we have, I think I apply like 8 Frostbites per hit right now with the current setup. That's a very large amount of Frostbites per hit considering how many times we're hitting per second. Now, the reason why I'm even playing Frostbite right now is because they buffed Frostbite. So what they did was they gave it a decent chunk of extra flat damage for Frostbites, but then they nerfed the cold penetration boots. So if you don't know, the Snowdrift boots were used in a lot of Frostbite builds all the way up until this patch because they were insanely overpowered. And what this caused is kind of caused a feedback loop where if you were playing a Frostbite build, you're playing Snowdrifts. If you weren't, if you weren't using Snowdrifts on a Frostbite build, you were kind of like incentivized to run Snowdrifts no matter what you did, no matter how hard you tried, you were incentivized to run, Snowdrifts. And that made Frostbite builds very boring for me, so I usually stepped away from them. But now that this got nerfed and Frostbite got buffed across the board, it means I can play Frostbite builds and not feel like as though I'm forced to use the bad boots, which is great. This means, there's a lot more, diversity in terms of Frostbite builds. Now, that's where this one comes in. Now, another thing I want to talk about is we are doing a very large amount of hits. So our Frostclaw hits like 5 times, our Ice Barrage hits a gabillion times, our Mana Strike hits a bunch, and that allows us to run the Invokers static touch rings. So I've actually used these rings before in the past, mainly with like a static build or a spark charge build. And in those builds, you get so many hits that you get an insane amount of ward on hit. So it's a 10% chance to get 75 ward on hit on shocked enemy, and we're shocking all the time thanks we're hitting everything with spells. And this means that, we can apply a bunch of these shocks, and of course get a bunch of ward as a consequence, you know, as long as the enemy is shocked. So you have a 10% chance to get like 150 ward on hit or whatever. And turns out that's very good with how many hits that we have, because the Ice Barrage will do it, the Frost Claws will do it, everything will do it. And this actually means that we want to actually scale a little bit of spark charges, not for damage per se, but we have the spark charge nodes inside Mana Strike, and we have some spark charge nodes inside Lightning Blast. This gives us even more extra hits on clear and gives us even more consistent uptime on our ward. The only problem is with this setup, it is requiring you to stay in combat to keep up your ward value, so you are going to have to kind of weave in and weave out and actually hit things. Thankfully, with ranged Mana Strike, it's not that big of a deal, because, you know, we can actually hit things from a range. We don't have to actually play as a melee build at all. Like, this is not a melee build, this is a range build with, you know, a melee attack. You do not have to be melee at all thanks to ranged Mana Strike. And all of this combined makes the build kind of feel okay. I like the damage. We're killing things very quickly, all things considered, for a Frostbite Spellblade. I'm pretty happy with that part. So the damage is there. The survivability is also there, not only because the ridiculous ward scaling that we have thanks to the rings, we also have a null portent for 20% less damage taken across the board. That's just a solid item in general. Very happy with that item, because not only does it apply to our HP, it also applies to our giant ward number, which is great. That's cool. Like, overall, I'm just really happy with this build overall. Now, one tip I will give you, one thing I will say, is for single target, we want to have convergence on our Lightning Blast so that we hit 2 extra times with our Lightning Blast on single target, so that, you know, we get 3 hits overall every single time we proc it with our Battlemages Endeavor. Now, for single target, that's amazing, but for clear, it's not as good, and it kind of, like, you know, our clear is kind of meh without it, which is kind of weird, to be honest. Sorry about my mic. But yeah, the idea here, though, what we can do instead is on clear, we can take out the node in convergence and simply leave a level always unspec'd in Lightning Blast, because we don't really need that extra level. Leave a level unspec'd in Lightning Blast to put into convergence whenever we need single target, and then we can spec out of it when we're done doing bosses, and then, you know, vice versa. Thankfully, with the new system and all that, it's very easy to line up a few bosses in a row with envies and stuff like that. So you can do all your bosses in a row, put in convergence to kill those bosses, then take convergence out when you're clearing, and you'll end up with a much better clearing experience, because Lightning Blast Chain is much better for clear than Lightning Blast Convergence, and vice versa. So just doing that has made the build significantly better, as just being able to swap between modes on Lightning Blast is great. Maybe one day they'll introduce a way to like be able to swap modes without having to spec into nodes and all that, but it's a small amount of maintenance for a very large amount of quality of life. Now, with all that being said, let's go in game and talk about the build more in detail, shall we? All right, here we are in game with the character. Let's talk about the skills in detail, shall we? So first things off, we have our Mana Strike. Mana Strike, we only care about it being ranged with these 2 nodes, the auto target and the range. This makes it so that we can play a ranged build as a melee build. Now, this does require us to stand still as we're attacking, but thankfully EHG has added dash and evade. This on top of teleport allows us to reposition very quickly and make it not feel like as though we're playing a melee build, which is great, and not standing still. So that's cool. Attack speed, of course, we want as much attack speed as possible to proc as many Frost Claws and our Lightning Blasts. Our Lightning Blasts are not capped by per second, and same thing with Frost Claws. The Frost Claws, we can have as many as we want, which means, of course, we want as much attack speed as possible. Then we're grabbing Spark Charges here, which is great. Now we're also grabbing some Mana Sustain. The reason why we're grabbing all this extra Mana Sustain is because Ice Barrage, every time we proc it, it's like 50 mana. Frost Claw is 9 mana. Lightning Blast is like 12 mana, so it's a decent amount of mana per, and this node here gives us 80% less mana gain for Mana Strike, but it turns out if we just grab Reclamation to get this massive 15 flat and this increased mana, it doesn't matter. We get plenty of mana back with this setup, and it means we can consistently cast all our stuff without having to worry about mana too often. It won't be that big of a problem, so that's cool. We like that. Like that subversion of Mana Strike's great. Now let's talk about our Lightning Blast, because we are proccing it off of Battlemages Endeavor. That's the whole point of the build here. So for Lightning Blast here, like I said, for clear, we just grab the extra chain, the 3 chains. You could put an extra point in this and get a 4th chain, or you can leave it open, like I said, to be able to slot into convergence when you want to, and then when you're done with the boss, you can simply take out convergence and go back to the clear version. We are converting it to cold so that it can benefit from the shred from freezing point. You do need to have cold spells for this specifically, right? So that's cool. Then we're going to grab the more damage here, front loaded, and then extra spark charges. And of course, the lightning attunement here for the lightning aegis, meaning that we take the less damage taken, which is great. That's for a lightning blast. I'm pretty happy with it so far. It helps out with clear significantly, and then for single target, it helps out as well, as long as we have convergence. Now, for Ice Barrage here, Ice Barrage is our single target damage. It's about half of our single target because it is just that strong, as having 8 Frostbite chance per hit, while also having all of this more damage. So this is 100% more damage with Looming Frost, a lot of fire rate against bosses, more damage here, more fire rate here, more damage here, less duration. Doesn't matter because we're constantly refreshing it thanks to Frost Claw. Then we're grabbing Ice Shield into Deep Shield and then into Frost Armor, giving us a massive 60% more cold damage when our Ice Barrage is active, which is applying to all of our Frostbites at once. So pretty much Ice Barrage is the way to go with this build, and it is a very large amount of single target. Now, you will notice without your Ice Barrage up, your single target will be significantly less, and that's mainly because, you know, the 60% more here, and Ice Barrage itself doesn't see some amount of single target. So proccing your Ice Barrage and maneuvering to make sure that it has 100% uptime on bosses is part of the skill of the build, which is completely fine. It's just like, you know, positioning and stuff like that, right? So Ice Barrage, very good. Now, if you do not want Snap Freeze, you can actually grab Ice Barrage and put it on your bar. Just be warned, it has a 9-second cooldown, which is bypassed by our Frost Claw. It is triggering it off cooldown, doesn't care about the cooldown at all, which is great. But just remember, it's a very fucking long cooldown. I mean, long cast time. Like, that cast time's awful. But, you know, if you need that consistency, you can definitely go with it that way. So I like Snap Freeze because I like interrupting bosses. And that's pretty much it for Ice Barrage. Now, enchant weapon, attack speed, icicles. That's it. That's literally it. Extra hits here, then attack speed. That's all you care about. That's legitimately all you care about. And cleanse is cool too. Then Frost Claw here, minus mana cost everywhere. Grabbing Makuatl, so we cast it more. This on top of the Spellblade node here, 20% chance on hit, so you get 50% chance to cast Frost Claw on hit, which is great. Then grabbing Volley of Glass for the extra hits, 5 extra hits on single target. Then 3 points into Powered Hail for the Ice Barrage chance, so we're constantly refreshing our Ice Barrage. Then 1 point into Kolheim Ballista for the 4% extra fire rate. This on top of the fire rate inside here makes our Ice Barrage go brrr on single target, and you'll notice it whenever you have your Ice Barrage going and it's like going full blast. You will notice the extra fire rate. It'll be like pa 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 pa. It's fucking great. But yeah, that's pretty much Frost Claw. Very, very self-explanatory. That's pretty much it for the skills. Let's talk about the passives that are important. Like I said, that Frost Claw node's important. Grabbing the less damage taken here is important. Getting as much attack speed as possible is also important. The ward gain on hit is also very nice. The ward decay threshold is also very nice. Sorcerer, we just simply need to put in 15 points to grab Ice Barrage. That's pretty much it for that. Then for Rune Master, we need to put in enough points to get Freezing Point for the Frostbite chance, Armor Shred chance. Otherwise, this build wouldn't work. Then for Mage Basic, like just with more retention, intelligence, and attacks and cast speed. And you can put one node in this to save you 2 points here, like 3 points here. It's entirely up to you. It would make it so you can like put extra points here or there, but I felt like it didn't really matter. I should have actually taken this point out and put it into ward retention instead. And that's pretty much it for the passives that matter. Now let's talk about blessings. Blessings, Void Res, so we can cap our Void Res and go over the cap with Null Portent very easily, so we take that 20% less Void damage. Then here, Lightning Res, same idea. Then here, All Res, same thing for Null Portent. We're running Blind Chance on hit, so normally we can't be crit. Then Armor percent, then Flat Armor here, and all of that combined means that, you know, we can be decently tanky. This armor plus the less damage taken on the Null Portent as well. And that's pretty much it for blessings. Now for required gear, 3 LP Battlemages Endeavor with attack speed, percent damage, and shred. That's like the bare minimum I would have to play this build. Without that, there's probably a better version of Frost Claw, Mana Strike shenaniganry you could do. But yeah, in 3 LP Battlemages Endeavor, actually very easy to get because I think its LP level is lower than its required level. So just getting one with 3 LP and those modifiers is good to go. Should be very cheap for the most part, considering not many people use this fucking thing. So like I'm like one of the only people that appreciate it. So that's funny. Wing guards here. Wing guards, you just want a 1 LP pair of wing guards with shred. That'll just take like 4 attempts on average, right? Wing guards aren't being very used by the community either, so getting this is not that hard. Eventually you'd want a 2 LP one with a T7 attack speed, but we currently don't have that access to that because, you know, we're playing Merchants Guild in this late in the faction like season and not many people are playing, so 2 LP wing guards are few and far between. That's pretty much it for gloves. For boots, I'm just running movement speed on Blade the Exile. Repositioning with this build is very important as we're standing still half the time, so being able to move when I need to is great. We do also get a very large amount of haste uptime thanks to wing guards because we're hitting a billion times, even with like automatically so with you know, ice barrage going off constantly, so we have a decent amount of movement speed and monoliths. Then of course like boots, like I said, movement speed, and no portent isn't required. I was running just a mage chest with like intelligence and like armor percent and stuff like that, and cold pen with frostbite. But no portent is best in slot eventually if you can get like if you can get it, of course. Just taking the less damage taken up to 20% is great. You do need to overload your resistances for it, but that's pretty easy to do on a ward build. Amulet here, shred armor on hit, frailty, dot dot, rings, invoker static touches. You want the max rolls or as close to max roll as possible. Belt here, Ellie dot, cold damage, res, pretty much perfect belt for us right now. Then for relic's kind of shitty, but it works. Ellie dot, int, and reses to help us cap over. I don't have necrotic res because we're doing void monos, but if you're doing like a necrotic res mono, do that. One thing to note, if you're going to be farming any monos that have an obsessive amount of poison, like Reign of Dragons and stuff like that, I would heavily suggest swapping some idols, some of these damage idols, for poison res idols, and focusing more on poison res and getting to like a 120% poison res, so no portent works even though you're taking poison, right? This will help taking less poison damage overall and not instantly die, because poison is very bad for ward in general as it just ticks it down consistently and it's not nice at all. So you definitely want some poison res for that, for sure. Now, then of course here, Thorn of Ambition. Thorn of Ambition is just 40% more armor and 40% more cold damage. Very good, very solid. Always going to be running this on Frostbite builds for sure. Then for idols, Frostbite duration are really strong, and then cold pen. Eventually you want cold pen with Frostbite here, and cold pen with Frostbite on your chest eventually, but that's like for later. Then of course we're running Frostbite duration on our idols, so you know we get longer frostbites. You could technically run the Frostbite duration gloves, but it's not really worth it in my opinion. Wing guards are better for this specific circumstance. Then just like some extra res idols help us cap out our no portent. And that's pretty much it for the character. That's pretty much it for the build. With all that being said, this has been Dread, off to go do something else.